This video is recorded to help you understand your assignments that are listed under the January 23rd schedule date. In that assignment, you have a number of things that are listed there, and not all of them are explained. The business marketing assignment comes with a word processing document that explains a couple of things. It also comes with the Excel spreadsheet with most of everything typed in. I don't want to waste your time typing. And then a location for you to submit the assignment. Okay. There are two other documents directly underneath there. It's an if worksheet and then a location for you to submit it. And this video will cover that. You also have breaking point, which I will discuss. VLOOKUP, there's a small worksheet that you have to type in, and it explains the VLOOKUP and where you can submit it. Just making sure that I share the right screen so you don't have to look at me. Okay. So once again, it's the business marketing word processing assignment and the Excel spreadsheet already created for you. And this is where you're going to submit it. And again, this video covers the material, the explanation of the if worksheet is 15 questions in which I want you to type in either the formula or what would result from the formula. Breaking point is an assignment that's business related, and it is based on the if statement. And there, I actually have the PDF so that you can look to see what it should look like when you're done. Again, I can check to make sure that you used formulas and just didn't retype the numbers in there. VLOOKUP, the PDF file, is instructions, very quick, very easy, and then where you submit the assignment. And then you have the chapter 2, multiple choice and matching. And I also have a chapter 2 quiz. I'm going to have to look at that to see if there's something that I can delete from there. And then the activity that's on page 190 in chapter 2 of the book. This video will explain the if statement. It will also cover absolute reference. It will also cover the lookup, which is different than the if statement. Okay. They are all mentioned in the book, but being in the first chapter, you went through the multiplication, the adding, subtracting, dividing formulas. I wanted to make sure that I hit a couple other formulas that's extremely important. Again, you'll come across this in the book, but it was a better place to add it right now. So I am going to share with you the word processing document that I have open. And I believe that it is the correct one that I want to show you. It's a business marketing if statement and absolute reference. The format of an if statement, it is a formula, so you have to have the equal sign. Equals if. There's no space in between the if and the parenthesis. But then there are 3 parts that you have to remember about this formula. And the first one is the condition. Okay, what mathematical operation are you comparing? Are you comparing the values located in two cells? Are you comparing if a cell holds a particular word? Once it does that mathematical comparison in the condition statement, based on the results of that condition, it will either execute the true part of the equation or the false part of the equation. Those commas in between the true and the false and the condition are extremely important. Okay, we'll get to a couple of the condition statements, but before we get that far, I want to make sure that you are aware that the true or the false statement can return words, numbers, mathematical operations. So can the false statement. But if you want it to return words, then they need to be in quotes. We're going to use the if statement in the following condition. I have a business marketing class Excel spreadsheet open, and I will share that with you in just a minute. But I want you to write the if statement that will look at their average, and if it's greater than 64.9, then in this final grade column, I want you to give them either the word pass or the word fail. And notice that I've typed that in red, and they are in quotes. Each individual statement has to be in quotes. This is what it will do if that condition is true. This is what it will do if the condition is false. And there's a typo in there, okay? In this credits granted, I'm going to have them return a 3 or a 0. Okay, they either get 3 credits or they get 0 credits. Now, I'm not going to put quotes around the 3 or the 0. I could, but then it would treat the 3 and the 0 as text. So it would be left aligned, where if we just use the 3 and the 0, the numeric values, then they will be treated as numbers and they will be right aligned. Okay. Down at the bottom here, there are a few formulas, 4 of them actually. I want you to count the number of formulas, or count the number of, not formulas, the number of averages that you have in here. I want you to find the class average. I want you to find the highest grade in this list. And then I want you to find the lowest grade in this list. Rename the sheet using your name. Be sure that the orientation is set to landscape. Be sure that it fits on one page. Okay. And the orientation is found underneath the layout ribbon. And you want to make sure the grid lines are printed. And in the footer, in the right section, you want to put the sheet tab. No, the date. The date is in the right. The sheet is in the center. And I will go through those pieces of information. And then please be sure to watch the video for further instructions. So that's the word processing document that you guys have. Now, if you'd let me open up the Excel document and make sure that I have the correct share. And I do believe that I am sharing the correct one. So what I want you to do is to put your cursor in E6, okay? In E6. I just want to make sure that I am sharing the right one. And I do think that I am. Okay. I want you to put your cursor in E6 and remember the basic formula for an if statement. It is a formula, so it has to start with an equal sign. Okay. Type in the if. And when you start to type, then there are a number of options for you to choose from that tries to help you out with your formula. And there are 4 of them here. I'm not going to use any of them. I'm just going to type it up. And I'm going to put the parenthesis in here. And directly underneath the cell, it comes up with if logic test, value if it's true, value if it's false. So it's trying to help you out with the instructions. And basically what we are looking at is, I want to look at the average that's in D6 and compare it to 64.9. Now, some of you guys that are farther advanced in Excel, you would probably do this a little bit different. Continue to watch, and I will eventually fix that and update that on a more user-friendly formula. If D6 is greater than 64.9, and I'm going to hit the comma so that I go on to the true statement, I'm going to have them work or have that return the word pass. What do I want it to do? If it is not greater than 64.9, then I want it to say fail and then end parenthesis. Obviously, this first individual, Adamson, is definitely going to pass. He's got a 77.1. So if I hit enter, you should spot check any of your data to make sure that it is correct. And then I want you to fill down. I want you to know that you type that formula once, make sure it works, and then fill it down. And there are only 2 individuals that fail. Now, I'm going to go back up to this first formula, and I'm going to double click in it so that I can edit the formula. 64.9 is not necessarily passing to me. Okay. There are some schools that use 85. A lot of the technical schools do use 85. The one thing that I want you to be aware of is if you change that formula, you need to make sure to fill it down, because right now the data in this spreadsheet is incorrect. So I'm going to fill it down and then again spot check to make sure that they pass or they fail. Okay. Now, because they were in quotes, it's treated as text, so it's right aligned. And I think something that many people do not realize is that every teacher might have their own percent. In the business world, you might use a formula similar to this for quality control. If a specific machine has it doesn't meet the conditions of your product, then you're going to get comebacks, or you're going to get returns, or it's not working. And if that machine is producing faulty products to a high enough rate, you want to replace the machine. So if the number of returns is greater than 2% of the product shipped by this machine, then you're going to send some type of message. You may also use this for employees and hours. documentations, whatnot. But again, there's three parts to an if statement: the condition, whether it's true, whether it's false. And because I wanted words returned, they have to be in quotes. Okay. I'm going to move over here to F and do credits granted. Remember that we wanted them to either, you want the computer to either place a 0 or a 3 in these cells. If they fail, 0. If they pass, 3. So remember that we used 85 for our cutoff here, and I'm going to leave that at 85. Okay. Excuse me, because there's something I want to show you. So equals if. Now we have to talk about the condition. We can say D6 is greater than 85. What do we want it to do if it's greater than 85? Then they should, if it's greater than 85, then they should receive credit. So I'm going to put the 3 in there. And in the false part, I'm going to put the 0. Now notice I did not use quotation marks. And I'm going to fill that formula down. And again, only 2 people passed. Something that I want you to be extremely aware of is that now if I change this percentage back to 64.9, don't forget to fill down to make the formula accurate. Credits granted do not match the pass or fail option that we put in to formula into the formula for column F. So you yourself have to remember to change them, not only change them, but fill down. So remember the 3 parts to an if statement: equals if, and then in parentheses, you've got your condition, what you want it to do if it's true, and what you want it to do if it's false. Okay. If you want words returned, you have to put them in quotes. If not, you can just use numbers, and you can put operations in there also. Okay. And you will find that out in your worksheet that I created for you to do with the 15 if statement questions. Now, I want to again reiterate that if that value changes from 64.9 to 85, or maybe you're checking hours for overtime, maybe you're checking if they've been with you, an employee of yours for over 5 years, you can check their hire date and today's date and see if it's more than 5 years, and that could be an if statement used in business. But that comparison may change, just like it did earlier in the video. We used 64.9 to begin with, but then we switched it to 85. And you have to remember to fill it down. If you do it this way, okay? If you do it this way, you have to remember to fill it down. Now I'm going to propose to use absolute reference. And again, some of you guys might be very comfortable with this. It does come up in the book rather quickly. So instead of using a value here, I'm going to go farther up into my spreadsheet, and I'm going to put cutoff. I put that in E2. In F2, I'm going to put 80. That's my cutoff. Anything below an 80 is a fail. Okay, anything below an 80 gives you a 0 or no credits granted. So instead of using the 64.9 value, I am going to simply refer to the material or the number that's in F2. And I'm not sure that you're aware of, if you're aware of this or not, but D6 is referred to in the formula and it's in blue. So is the shading of the cell. F2 is referred to in the formula, and that is in red print. So is the shading of the actual cell. It's in red. So this if statement is going to compare the value that's in D6 with the value that's in F2, and it's going to return whether you pass or fail. Okay, so let's try that formula and spot check. Should this person have passed? Should S. Eckert have passed? You should not have. So your data is incorrect. What I want to show you now is there is a shortcut to show your formulas, and it's the control key and the tilde key. And I'm going to resize the windows so that we can visualize the formulas and see. And notice in the formulas that we have F2 changed to F3 and F4 and F5 as we filled them down. I absolutely positively want to compare all of these grades with the same value, 80. Absolutely positively want this F2 to stay F2 throughout all of these formulas. And in order to do that, you need to make it absolute reference, which means absolutely positively always refer to F2. And the way that you do that is to make this absolute reference, you need to edit this formula. And there are shortcuts to it, but what I want you to do is to put a $sign in front of the F and a $sign in front of the 2. Those $signs have to be both in front of the F and in front of the 2 so that the F stays the same and the 2 stays the same. If you do not have the $sign in front of both characters in that cell reference, it will not work properly. I absolutely positively want F2 to stay the same. So I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to go back to my original data. Okay, and I'm going to increase the widths of the cells here so that we can see this a little better. And that formula is $F, $2. That's what I'm comparing it to. And I'm going to fill it down. And again, spot check. Make sure they're right. Let's go here to change this to, instead of 64.9, let's change it to F2. But remember that we need to make it absolute reference. We absolutely, positively need for it to compare it to the value in F2 all the time. And remember to fill it down. And again, spot check. Spot check these easy ones. Get confidence in the easy formulas and the easy material that you do, because once you're working in the business world and you make a spreadsheet, those errors are not going to be as easily found because they're going to control a lot more data. Okay. Now, we've had to fill down a couple of times, and you're probably asking yourself, well, what's the shortcut? If you've got to fill it down, why not do it the very first way I showed you? Here's the reason why I'm doing that, okay, is because now all I have to do is change that one cell, and it's absolutely positively always going to refer to F2. I can real quick show you my formulas and notice that when I fill down, the D6 changed to D7, to D8, because those are the individual student averages. But it's absolutely positively always comparing it to the value in F2, and that's absolute reference. Okay, let's change this to 70. And when I hit enter, watch how your values change instantly. If for some reason you want that percentage to be 90, now that you've set the spreadsheet up correctly, you can change those cutoff values or those percents, and your data will reflect that instantly. Okay. I'm going to show you one other thing with this spreadsheet, just with the if statements. Remember, equals if has 3 parts: the condition it needs to meet, and it can be an operation or it could be a value, could be words. If it is words, it needs to be in quotes. And don't misspell something. Okay. Then we went to the absolute reference when we absolutely positively wanted them to continually compare to the value of F2. Okay. In both formulas. But remember, I told you an if statement can contain lots of different things. So I am going to show you that instead of F2 here, I can see if E6 actually contains the word fail. If it contains the word fail, put in a 3, otherwise put in a 0. That works the same as what we had before. It's kind of a trickle effect. I'm going to change this to 70. In this formula, it will pass or fail, pass or fail the students that need to be passed or to be given a failure based on their 70%. This particular formula looks at E6, and if it's a pass, they get 3. If it's a fail, they get 0. So the if statement has a lot of possibilities. Okay. Now I want you to come down here to these 4 little things, little formulas down here. Count the number of papers. I have question marks in there. I want you to remove the question marks and use the formula equals count. And notice that when you type in the word count as the beginning of your formula, there's a count A, there's a count blank, a count if, a count ifs, okay, a D count and a D count A. I simply want you to use the count. We will get into the count if and the D count later on. That equals count, and then inside the quotation marks, I want you to place the cells that you want it to actually count. Instead of typing in D6 to D18, I can highlight them. And again, the letters, the cell references D6, colon, D18, starts at D6, ends at D18. The text is in blue, the highlight is in blue. It counts how many values there are there. Watch what happens when I clear a cell. This one I am going to clear. Right click, clear contents. Notice that it counted the number of cells that actually have data in them, so the number of papers went down to 12. All right, I'm going to put that back in there so that I don't mess anything else up. The class average has question marks in there, and that is also a formula. Equals average, open parentheses. You cannot abbreviate AVG. Now, depending on you're working on a different version of Office, a different version of Excel, you might be able to, but you can't here. It will not accept AVG. Equals average. And then it finds the average of D6 all the way down to D18. Instead of us adding them and then dividing by the count, it automatically does. 76.61538. I want to reduce that down to 1 decimal. So I'm going to select the cell, and I am going to go up to the ribbons at the top and go to the home ribbon in the number group. And I want to show you that there are 2 icons here. And if you hover over them, they'll tell you which one decreases the number of decimals. And you can look at it. The top row has 2 zeros after the decimal. The bottom row has 1. So that's the decreased decimal. Okay, so I decreased it to 1. Now keep in mind that you cannot abbreviate. You cannot abbreviate the word average. You used to be able to, but now you have to type in the whole thing. I'm going to show you a formula to find the highest grade in the list. Equals max. Now, for some reason, you can abbreviate max where you couldn't abbreviate the word average. I have max, and then in parent, and then I have the open parentheses, and I'm going to highlight that range of cells. And it finds the highest number in the list. Accordingly, I want to find the lowest number in the list, so I'm going to use min, and you can abbreviate that also. Equals MIN, and then where do you want it to start? Where do you want it to end? Okay. Now, don't be concerned about the fact that there are 3 other spreadsheets available on this same file: American Idol, iTunes, and X Games. Okay, don't be concerned about that. You can delete them if you'd like. Okay. One of the things that I found rather funky in your last assignment that you did, they had you create the Excel spreadsheet, and then they had you copy and paste it and show the formulas. Well, I'm not sure why they did that, other than just to show you how you can do it, to copy the worksheet. To rename the worksheet, you just simply go down to this sheet name, and it becomes highlighted, and you can type in what you want. So I'm going to use BUS, and then I'm going to put Mark just to change the name. If you right click after you hit enter, if you right click, you are given the opportunity to protect the sheet, which we'll talk about in class, or we'll talk about in another video or throughout the chapters. You can change the tab color. You can hide it. Okay. You can rename it. You can even insert a sheet in front of Business Mark. Okay. I am going to move or copy. And a little dialog box opens up and it says, move selected sheets to the book. Where do we want to place it? Remember, I told you that there's a couple other spreadsheets there that you could have deleted if you wanted to. I want to move it to the end and I want to create a copy. If I didn't want to create a copy, I could have simply moved it to the end. Or I could have just picked it up and drug it to where I want to place it. These can be deleted. You do not need them. They were there for another exercise, but I decided you didn't need any more work. Now you've got that copy of your business marketing shirt or your business marketing sheet, and you could have hit Control-tilde so that I could use the formulas and see them. But as I grade them, all I would have to do is open up your sheet and hit Control-tilde, and I get to see them anyway. And I do check those formulas. I make sure that you use formulas rather than just typing in the value. Okay, I think that you should recognize that even with the assignments you've done so far, the feedback that I give you shows you that I do read them. I just don't grade on the fact that you've submitted something, so I'm going to give you credit. That is not the type of teacher I am. Okay, so if statements, 3 parts. Condition, what do you want to do if it's true? What do you want to do if it's false? Okay. I want to make sure that you are familiar with that. I might even put watch the website attendance to make sure that I get attendance. I might give you a 1-question quiz about an if statement, just so that I could get attendance in and give everybody credit for that. There is an expansion to this if formula that I want to show you. It's extremely important that I show you this. In an if statement, you only have 2 options. It's either true or false. You can only have 2 different things to choose from. In a vlookup, you can have as many as you want, as many as you set up. So with the same business marketing, and the fact that we discussed the if statement and we've discussed absolute reference, and we've discussed the 4 formulas down at the bottom, I'm going to expand it and talk a little bit about the vlookup. And again, it's in the book. It's just not in it, in chapter 2 in the correct order, or in the order that I wanted to show you. So stick with me here for just a minute and we will discuss the vlookup. This is a group of students that I have here, and their final averages and their final grades. Instead of giving them a pass or a fail, 3 credits to pass, 0 credits if they fail, I want to give them A, B's, C's, and D's. Similar to satisfactory, average, unsatisfactory, a number of different options. There's all sorts of ideas that you can use the vlookup for. I'm going to move my cursor into L, and it may go off to the next page. and I'm not concerned about that. I just want to leave a couple of columns in here to show you, to leave enough room and to show you how a VLOOKUP works. And I'm just going to type the word table in there to show you that this is where my table is. And I'm going to start with the values in column L, and I'm going to put 0, 60, 70, 80, 90. And I'm going to leave it at that. Now we could have 100, right? We could definitely have 100, but that's a old-fashioned grading scale. 0 to 60, or 0 to 59, I should say, is failing. 60 to 69 is a D. 70 to 79 is a C. 80 to 89 is a B. 90 to 100 is an A. And you may have extra credit, whatnot, available. So it's a possibility that they would even get over 100. The important part that I'm listing here is that we do not, repeat, I do not put 0-59. I'm not giving you the range. Okay, this VLOOKUP cannot use that range. It needs to use the lower limit of that value, and it'll make sense here as I work with it. Okay, anything between 0 and a 59 is an F. Between 60 and 69 is a D, and so on. So if they get 90 or above, they get an A. Now I'm going to move over here and I'm going to put letter grade. Oop, sorry about that. I'm going to make this text go into two separate lines, but in the same cell. Alt Enter, and I believe that was in your reading for chapter 1. Okay. I want the computer to automatically look at Adamson's grade, which is 77.1, and I want it to return the letter grade. Not just necessarily if it's true or false, what I want it to do if it's passing or failing 0 or 3 credits. I want it to choose from a list of 5 different options. So I want it to use a VLOOKUP. Now, if you go on to Google and search for the VLOOKUP command, it does a pretty good job of explaining it, probably better than I am. But I want you to kind of hear a story that deals with the VLOOKUP. Okay. What we want our Excel file to do is to look at the final average. So there's a little minion inside the computer. It's going to 77.1. Okay. Once it looks at that 77.1, I want it to compare it to the table. And when it looks at it, it remembers this 77.1, and then it goes to the table and it says 0. I'm bigger than that. So because it's a vertical table, it goes down. It says 60. I'm bigger than that. 70. I'm bigger than that. 80. Oh crap, I'm not that big. So I go back to the 70 and it returns a C. Okay. In the same manner, when we get the formula to go for F Barnes, I want it to look at 82.3, look at, compare it to this table, and in this case, return a B. So it looks at 82.3, compares it to the table, and the entire table is right here. So it looks at the 0. Nope, I'm not going to return an F. It looks at the 60 and says I'm larger than that. So I'm not going to return a D. Looks at the 70 and says, nope, I'm larger than that. I'm not going to return a C. looks at the 80 and says, nope, I'm bigger than that. I'm not going to return a B. Then it looks at the 90 and says, oh crap, not that big. Take a step back, and it returns a B. Returns the second column in the table. So let's write the formula. Equals, and you have to have the equal sign for a formula. Okay, so equals V lookup, and the V lookup is all one word, and it has to, with the V lookup, it's vertical lookup, and it has no spaces between the actual word V lookup and the parentheses. When you start the formula, it says lookup value table array and column index. So be aware of that, that helps you. We want it to look at D6. We want to compare it to, so I put in a parentheses, compare it to this table. Now the table runs from L7 all the way to M11. And then I want it to return whatever is in the second column. And that is our formula. Take a minute, look at that. It looks at D6. It compares it to L7 to M11, and it returns whatever's in the second column. When I hit enter, that formula is going to return a C. When I fill that formula down for the rest of my students, D6 should change to D7, to D8, to D9, to D10, okay? I want that to change when I fill it down. Do I want the cell references L7 to M11 to change? No. I want it to always refer to that table, always compare it to that particular table. So I have to make them absolute reference. And the shortcut is F4. It's a function F4. So now D6, when I fill it down, the D6 will change to D7, to D8, to D9, and continue down the cell column there. L7 will automatically always stay L7, and so will M11. And it's going to return the second column. Spot check. Make sure they are correct. Spot check the easy ones. Get the confidence built. Remember, when we made the table, we just used the smaller limit. This is actually from 0 to 59, but we don't put that range in there. We just tell it the smallest value that it can be. Now, very quickly, and I'm going to talk this very quickly, I can put a comment here, and I can put for an F, I could put fail. Excuse me, unsatisfactory. Average, above average, super. Okay, that's the comment that I'm going to have here, based on if they get an A, a B, a C, D, or an F. So I'm going to have it, and seriously, you can have it look at the average, or you can have it look at the letter grade. I'm going to have it look at the average, okay? So what I'm going to do is say V look up, look at the average, which is D6. And remember that we do want that value to change as it flows down the column. I want it to change from D6 to D7 to D8. I want it to look at this entire table, the entire table. And notice that I have now 3 columns. And I have to make an absolute reference. My last comma says, what column of the table do you want it to return? I want it to return the 3rd column. Should the first person receive an average, and fill it down. The way we have it set up here, it works great. If these values change, all they have to do is change the table, and all of these should change appropriately. The same as when we change the cutoff value up here in F2. If you have an instructor that goes by a much higher standard and it's not 60, let's say you have 70 here, notice that they automatically change in column G and H. Let's say 85, 92, and 97, or 96. Check them, spot check them. I've shown you the if statement in a number of different ways to use the if statement. You only have 2 options, what it does if it's true, what it does if it's false. I've shown you absolute reference when you fill that formula down. If you absolutely positively want to refer to the same cell, make it absolute reference. And I've shown you the vlookup, which the expansion of the vlookup is so that there's more than 1 or 2 options. In the if statement, you only have 2, true or false. But in a vlookup, you can have as many options as you want. It's exactly how they calculate taxes. They look at your income and they have different options that you have available to you, different things to look at. I've also shown you the number of papers, which is the count formula, the average formula, the highest grade, and the lowest grade. There is one other thing on here that I need to show you, okay? The thing that I need to show you now is, if you look at the student ID, it goes 300, 301, 302, 304, and it looks like they're all in order until you get to Goldstein. And he becomes student number 311. So that they bounce around like that, when actually they are alphabetical. That is how they have been put in there, is that they're alphabetical. I want to sort them by student ID. Many times you can show your employees or your students based on their employee number. If nobody knows your employee number, nobody knows where your standard is, or your salary. If your student ID, if you use a student ID number, nobody knows your grades, but if you use an employee number, nobody knows your salary or different items similar to your driver's license number. Okay. So I want to sort them according to ID number rather than alphabetical. The one I want you to keep track of is Jay Goldstein. He has a 63.7 average and he is failing. But that's the first number that I noticed is out of order. So What I'm going to do is highlight this range of cells and I'm going to sort them numerically so that they are in order by ID. But keep in mind, I want you to keep track of Goldstein. He has a 63.7. So with those cells selected, there are a number of different ways to sort, a number of different ways. But I'm going to have you go to data, the data ribbon at the top, and I'm going to have you go to the sort and filter group. And notice that you have an A to Z, a Z to A, and then you have another option to sort. And we'll get through that because you're going to be able to sort columns. Like you could rearrange the two columns instead of copying and pasting and inserting them. You can rearrange columns. So we'll get to that, okay? Basically right now, I just want to sort this information based on student ID. So I'm going to sort it A to Z, which is smallest to largest. What's going to happen when I click on these, click on that icon, it says that Microsoft Excel found data next to your selection. Since you have not selected this data, it will not be sorted. Well, we do want 311 to go with Goldstein because that is his student ID number. So we're going to want to expand the selection and I'm going to click on sort. And hey, it did it. It sorted them according to student ID. 311 is Goldstein, which so it knew that the student ID number 311 was Goldstein. But look at his grade. He didn't have a 77.8. So I'm going to hit undo. I'm going to hit Control Z, which is undo. Goldstein had a 63.7. And he was given, by sorting it and sorting it incorrectly, he was given a 77.8. And you can't have that in the business world. You can't have that error. So here is what you need to be aware of. Okay, you need to be aware of this. If there is an empty cell in between your data, you need to delete that cell. Because when we got that error message explaining that there was data right next to the cell that we were selecting to sort and it wanted us to expand it, we said yes, but it only expanded to the student name. So I'm going to highlight the entire row, excuse me, the entire column of C. I'm going to right click and choose delete. Now I'm going to follow the same operation. Going to highlight those. I'm going to go to the data ribbon and I'm going to hit A to Z and I'm going to tell it to expand the selection. And keep in mind, Goldstein has an average of 63.7. Oh, notice something else happened there. So I need to Control Z to undo. And you need to make sure that you only select the values that you want sorted. Ah, look at there, it happened again. That isn't what I want. I don't want those titles at the bottom. So I'm going to hit Control Z and I am going to insert a row. Not there. I'm going to insert a row right here. Now highlight it and sort it. It left the column headings the way we wanted it, but it sorted the student ID, the student name, and the final average properly. The reason I went through this is because you do not want empty columns between your data, but you do want empty rows. That is why there's an extra empty row down here. Okay, You have headers and footers and different things that you need to do to this. So please watch just for a minute, and I'm going to very quickly go through this. You need to go to the insert menu and clear off to the far right. You have a text group, and you can choose header and footer. And when you are in the header and footer, I want you to be aware of the fact that this doesn't fit, so we need to change it to, or the orientation to landscape, or we can shrink the column widths, a number of different things. But I want you to scroll down to the footer, and you were asked to put the sheet name, so it should say BUSMARK in the center. In the header and footer tools under the design, notice it says sheet name as an option there. When you do that, you don't actually see the sheet name, you see the tab. Okay, you see the word tab. But if you click out of it, notice that it replaces it with business mark, which is the sheet name. You were asked to put insert the date. If I put the current date in there, listen, as a business person, if you put the current date, which is January 23rd, that's great. But if there's an error in this particular file and you have to access it 2 months down the road in March, when you open it up, that date is going to show March 23rd. And that is not necessarily what you want in the business world. So consider that if you want the most current date in your document, use the insert, use the current date icon up here in the header and footer. If you don't, then type the date. Okay, type the date in. Now, I am going to open up breaking point because I'm giving you a lot less information on that breaking point than I am on any other document. I believe I have the right one shared. Let me check. Yep, it is the correct one shared. Before I had kind of a border around it, so I knew that I was sharing the correct one. Please be aware that there will only be one document for this. You will submit one document, and when I grade it, I'm going to be able to check your data, check your results by using these breaking points, okay? I'm going to put 50,000 in here. And if it's less than 50,000, I'm going to put 5%. And if it's greater than 50,000, I'm going to put 15%, knowing that when I grade your assignment, these breaking points might be different. I might want to put 65,000. Maybe it's been a good year, and the sales, the bonuses are calculated based on if they've sold $65,000 worth of furniture, whatever it is. So I look at their sales, and I'm going to compare it to this breaking point. And if they did not sell that, I'm going to give them a 5% bonus. If they did sell 50,000, I'm going to give them a 15% bonus. 15 or 5% of their sales. So very quickly, I'm going to show you, if you put your cursor across from Joe Smith, for his 96 bonus, I want you to look at his sales and compare it to this breaking point. Look at his sales, compare it to this breaking point. If it's greater, give him 15% of his sales. If it's not, if it's false, then only give him 5% of his sales. So with that being said, you should know what formula you use, if you use the if statement or the vlookup. And in this case, we only have two options. So it's easier to use the if statement. Equals if his sales is less than the breaking point, I want to give him 5% of, means times, of his sales. Otherwise, I want to give him 15% of his sales, which is $12,000. Or I shouldn't say 12,000, 1,250. Now you need to figure out how to fill that down and across for 96, 97, and 98. You need to calculate the totals, which is the sum formula. Again, you can fill it to the right. You need to calculate the averages so that I know the average sales for each of the three columns, and I know the average bonuses for each of the three columns. When I get it, when you submit this, I'm going to look at your formulas and I'm going to make sure your formulas are correct. I've got a printout of what it should look like. What I'm going to do is change this to 65,000, change this to 10, and change this to 5. And when I hit enter, everything should change. I shouldn't have to fill it down. I shouldn't have to do anything. I will know my average sales. I will know my average bonuses for that year using the if statement and using absolute reference. Okay. If you want, you can use the vlookup. That's perfectly fine. The instructions are down here in the Excel document. Please complete the totals and the averages for all columns, the top 3 cells with the value of option 2. Even though I have the 2 options down here, you will be entering here because I want it to refer to this cell. So I'm going to physically be able to change this to 65,000, 10%, or 20%, and it's going to calculate his correct bonus or their correct bonus. And all of these amounts will change. I think that that is all of what I need to show you. I did remove some assignments or hid them from you. So if you got a printout of your actual assignments prior to me updating it, don't be afraid of that. I just took away some assignments for you. Notice that they are all due. They should be due on the 29th, on Sunday the 29th. So the only other thing I will tell you is, just by chance, I checked my email and answered some questions. I don't always get my emails. I don't always check my emails on the weekend. So if you have questions, don't be afraid to text that number that's on the syllabi. Okay? Thanks, guys. Have a great week.